Hello and welcome to the Think Bambu podcast, the show where we unpack the personal and professional growth journeys from some of the most interesting minds in business and marketing. And today we have none other than Margery McBain. Marjorie, for those that are unfamiliar with you, would you like to give a little introduction to yourself?
Yeah, my name's Marjorie. I'm the director and founder of Gravitate HR. I started the company 20 odd years ago, and we provide outsourced HR solutions, particularly to the SME market.
Awesome. Right, so I'm just going to jump straight into it, Marjorie, because you mentioned there that you started this 20 years ago, which is absolutely no mean feat. So first of all, congratulations, because
Thank
that's
you.
you've survived, and it is surviving. You've gone through the pandemic and everything else there, and you've come out the other side of it stronger than stronger than ever. So what I'd like to do now is I would like to go back to the beginning of all of this. I've got my notes around you here about where you've been and what you've done in the past. So if you're thinking, how do you know all this about me? I've written it all down here if you're wondering where I'm going. And what I'd like to know is you've worked in other places like Waitrose and John Lewis for fairly established companies here. What was the incentive or the push to leave that behind and set up on your own and not have that security blanket, so to speak?
I think probably the first thing to say is that I came from a family business background. So my father owned his own business. So it's running your own business and being a business owner is not something that's alien to me. But however, after I left university, I went off into corporate land. As you say, I worked for Waitrose, John Lewis Partnership, Dixon Stores Group, and I ended up as head of HR for Jenner's. And the incentive was, well, actually, I didn't have security because Jenner's was acquired and I was made redundant. And
Oh, okay.
and I looked around to think, what might I do? But the main driver was, as an internal HR person, a brown envelope would land on your desk in those days through the post or the internal post with an instruction to, drive some change program or change contracts of employment. And I wanted not to receive brown envelopes, but to determine my own brown envelopes so that I dictated my own um, uh, what I was doing. And probably most importantly, I also wanted to practice the brand of HR that I believed in, and good practice because I'd seen a whole range of different ways. HR might be HR, but the way that you do it can be very different. And I wanted to do it with integrity and trust and discretion. And that's really been at the core of not just what we've done, but how we do what we do. So brown envelopes, independence, and how to do HR well.
That really resonates because that's very similar to why I Think Bamboo started after. And look, I'm not going to name names or bash any companies or anything like that. It was seeing how things shouldn't be done and have an idea of, well, this could be better. And it might not be, technically better, but what I found is that the experience of it all is a lot better. People can come out of there, go to bed at the end of the day happier and still getting the same result without all the antagonism that might come in on the day to day. 20 years is a long time. 20 years is a long time. What would you think to yourself about what's changed in your approach to Gravitate HR from year one to year 20 in terms of your leadership style and how you've chosen to run it?
So back in the day, year one, there was really just me and a laptop and a mobile phone, and I did everything from watering the plants to boiling the kettle to delivering, doing everything, every contract until I took on my first employee, and slowly grew to built the company. Um, Now others manage the team more than I do. and I still keep my client portfolio. I'm on the tools, maybe not daily, but certainly weekly, and still very much keep abreast of what's happening because it's an ever changing, ever evolving world as legislation changes and as employees' expectations change. So I didn't have anybody to lead other than myself at the beginning, and now I have. Um, and it's interesting. The perception of the role that I play has had to change over the years. Um, but
Mhm.
also because I want other people to grow and to develop within the business. I have to hand over some of the control and the management and the leadership of the company to others, which is right and proper.
And what would you say those changes of perception have been? What you don't have to go through every single one. Like what's the biggest perception change, and or the positive, negative? What are your thoughts?
I think that I think that sometimes people think that because you started something, you aren't able to hand it over. And
Mm.
I am quite, I am quite a possess. I like to quietly, fiercely possessive of what is mine and looking after it and protecting it. But in order for a business to grow, you have to let go. You have to let other people get involved. In order to be able to retain employees within the company, you've got to give them space and width and scope to grow and to have ideas. And it can't all just be about me, and I never wanted it just to be about me. And other people's ideas are really important, and I like to see people coming up with ideas and being able to run with it. But um, I suppose I'm still responsible. I'm vicariously liable as a director of the
Yeah.
company, which is quite scary, So, I take the responsibility and the liability, but allowing others to grow and develop within that space.
And how does it feel when you're, or can you describe how it feels when you are possibly in the earlier days having to let go a little bit to grow? It's necessary. I do believe that it's absolutely necessary for business to grow. That needs to happen. But how did that feel? I've spoken with others, and I know that they've some have struggled. Some have struggled with that.
Well, it's about trust, isn't it? Because you're letting others go out and do the day job, speak to clients and give advice. And for us, there's the risk factor of giving the wrong advice for an employer potentially to end up in an employment tribunal with a huge liability against them because we've not done our job properly. That's a lot of letting go of, Jamie.
Yeah, that's fair.
And so you have to make sure that A, you choose the right people to work alongside you.
Hmm.
B, that they have a framework and standards and values to work within so that they are guided, because you can't they have to be able to make decisions on the hoof, and you need to give them some parameters that they can help to make those decisions. And you have to support them, and if they get it wrong, then being able to help them to see how they could have got it right and
Yeah.
mentor them through all of that. So yeah, that's quite a scary precipice to look over. And I think for many that's why they decide not to employ people, because they're having to share that risk. And but you have to then mitigate that risk. You've got to believe in the person, you've got to train the person, you've got to support them, and you've got to stand up for them and give them frameworks and guidance and boundaries to work within. So I guess without knowing it, that's probably what I've tried to do.
One of the things you just mentioned there was around risk, and having to take that risk when you're bringing on others into the business. So I'd like to ask you about what was the, again, earlier on, or it could be later on, what's been the steepest learning curve that you've had to go through as a business owner?
So I guess when you're employed, you turn up at 9 o'clock or 8:30 or whatever it is, and you do your day job, and you go home at night, and at the end of the month or whatever day of the month, you get paid, and you turn up the next day again, and the next month you get paid, and so on and so forth. As a business owner, you've got to make sure there's money in the bank to be able to pay this yourself and or others, and therefore you've got to go out, find the work. You've got to create the business relationship that allows you to invoice that work. And you've got to make sure that you're going to get paid and you've got the money in the bank in order to pay the salaries and the overheads. So the line of sight between actually delivering work and getting paid for it is very, very short. And I think that's the reality. That's the stark truth of um of of being in business. And there are no guarantees. Nobody's going to come in and give you a lottery grant or a fund or you've just got to do it for yourself. And in some ways, I think that stark truth makes you have to go out and make that sale. You've got to go out there and make those connections. You've got to make sure that there's money in the bank or you're able to pay your way. Um, and I think that's the biggest difference between being employed and being a business owner. And then, it's all about that line of sight and the security of having funds in the bank to pay yourself.
That the cash flow is everything. I would say that's when if someone's to ask me the steepest learning curve, it's cash flow, keep cash in the bank. You never know when a rainy day is going to come. As you say, if you have to make it. You have to make it, and it's especially if you've got a family. Or it's not especially if you've got a family. The added pressures of a family on top of that are a pretty strong driver to what are you going to do to ensure that this goes your way. It's very strong.
And all the quality things that have to be in there to make sure
Mhm.
that it's all very well you do the work, you send the invoice, but are they actually going to pay it, and are they going to pay it willingly or not? So that really drives for me, that really drives everything within the business to make sure that you've got the right relationships, you're delivering the right work, and that people value what you do, and make sure that you're at the top of the payment run.
Yeah, yes, and it is wonderful when they don't question and they just, yep, this is great, thank you very much, on to the next thing and go, right, we're on to the right thing here. We're doing what we should be doing. I've focused a lot on Marjorie, the business owner, and I'd like to transition a little bit over into Marjorie, the person. What was that transition like going from Marjorie, the employee, to Marjorie, the employer? What were some of the aspects of yourself that you maybe hadn't uncovered yet, that you didn't know about yourself, that maybe hadn't come into light as an employee? As you say here, there's some other challenges there, but is there anything that you found different, that you saw differently about yourself as an employee as opposed to an employer?
I suppose going back to the point where I started was I came from a family business. I came from watching my family build and grow businesses. And therefore I whilst I at that time wanted to go off and experience something very, very different, I probably had hankered after doing something for myself for quite a long time. So when the opportunity came, and um it came at a time because I had been made redundant, and sadly my dad passed away. And sorry, this is where I get emotional. It was standing at on his funeral that I was like, you know what? Just go and do this. Go and do it. You can do it. You know what to do. And it was like my dad was talking to me to say, come on, girl, go and get on with it. So it actually once I'd made that decision and once I was determined that that's what I was going to do, it was then a matter of making it happen.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
once I was in it, it was like, you've got to make this work. Come on, you've really got to. And it's not easy. I mean, getting a business off the ground is not easy. And it doesn't happen in 2 minutes, 5 minutes. And it takes a lot of determination and effort. And, at the time, well, I still have 3 children, but at the time they were all in primary school. They were just young. And it's interesting, I think I shared with you, we had a little celebration last summer to sort of celebrate 20 years of being incorporated. And my youngest son posted on LinkedIn his reflections on um, what his mum had done. I think he called it, yeah, bootstrapped a business.
Hmm.
And actually, at the time, I was struggling with my responsibilities as a parent, as a mum with young children versus trying to grow this business. And it was very gratifying, is that the right word? That actually being a really good role model to my children to show them what hard work, effort, and determination means, and having that come back to me, last year, 20 years later, kind of vindicated my decision to do what I did. And I think the reason I mention it is that often when you've got young children, you feel really guilty because you've not been at something or you've not done something. But actually being a good role model, being a role model that actually shows your children that you can balance all those responsibilities, is actually can be a real positive for them. It's not necessarily a negative. Does that does that
Yeah,
make
that
sense?
makes complete sense to me. It must feel very validating. That's how I can see that about, not to say, yep, like, I don't think anyone sits there and goes, yep, it was absolutely all worth it. Wouldn't change a thing. It's but to have that moment of going, okay, I didn't do, and maybe it's a very Scottish thing as well, because you said earlier that, like, it's not about me. It was never meant to be about me. And I go, such a Scottish answer, and completely resonate with that as well. Because my dad ran his own business for 28 years before he retired, something around that time. And I saw the amount of effort that he put into that, and I wanted him to know that I was like, hey, you're good. Like, I can't understand what that looks like, and I didn't have any desire at that point or ambition. I was actually trying to make it as an actor at that point, so completely different. Didn't really understand anything of what he was doing. It seemed quite all suits and ties, and I was kind of like, oh, that's not very much me at all. But I wanted him to know that I was like, hey, I can see the effort you're putting in here, and as a parent, you're doing all right. And I think he went, oh, thanks, Jamie. Didn't ask for it, but thank you very much. So it's as a parent, it does feel quite validating, and I can completely resonate as well with the I call it like the guilt sometimes of thinking like you've only got so much energy and you're trying to put it everywhere all at once and have that balance there. And I want to be able to give the majority of it over to the kids. And sometimes there are days where the business, it's gonna it's gonna take almost everything, and you feel guilty for, I'm really sorry, you're getting the dregs at the end of the day here, and I really hope this is worth it. They're probably not going to remember any of this because they're right now 1 and 4. If we're still around in 10 years' time, they might go. They actually still probably won't care when they're that age either.
My eldest son now runs his own business, and
Awesome.
yeah, which he went into a corporate career and then decided he wanted to do his own thing, and so I think there are lessons that you can share, and there are experiences that you can share, and you know um I think that's just certainly Corey's validation of 20 years in business was meant a huge amount to me, huge
Yeah.
amount.
Well, talking about the load that as business owners you carry, what I'd like to know is you in HR you can deal with some pretty weighty and sensitive subjects almost daily. Is that a bit accurate to say it's probably on a daily basis?
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes, some days more than others, and the need for confidentiality, the trust that people put in you, in terms of sharing information, and you know, and people coming to you going, I think we've really messed up and we really need your help. And you're going like, look, you just need to tell me what's what, and then that's the first step in trying to get it sorted out. So yes, and some of the subject matter that we deal with can be quite difficult. And as you say, it's quite stressful, and often, although we have policies and procedures, and HR is all about following policies and procedures, there's not always a necessarily an obvious path for resolution, or for finding or navigating a way through a difficult situation. So yes, over the years, and every year there's a case that really um, weighs heavy. So yes, it comes with the territory. It comes with what we do.
How do
And does
you
that?
leave that at the door? Like how do you get back to when working days done? And I know the business stays with you. I'm learning that the hard way. Uh, how can you leave that at the door, or what are the steps or habits that you've created to leave it with you so when you get back home or you're able to continue
So
as Marjorie?
so I think um, there's an assumption that you do leave it at the door, and I'm not sure that I always do. Uh, I said to a client not that long ago, if I could charge you the number of hours that I'm lie awake at night worrying about this, but it's not chargeable hours. So yeah, I'm not sure that even after all these years, I've learned how to leave it at the door. Um, because I'm quite passionate, I get passionately involved in it, and it becomes part of what I think about all the time if it's a really difficult case. However, I do I do really actively try to manage my well-being, and those who know me well will know that that involves all sorts of really bizarre things, like swimming in the sea when it's 2 degrees outside and 3 degrees in the water, or
Wild
you're
swimming.
wild swimming in East Lothian. Yes.
I mean,
Cold water
that's,
dipping.
that's so crazy to me. I've got a few friends that do that, and I've been invited. I can't bring myself. So well done to you, because I just can't bring myself
I
to.
absolutely love it. I love it. And I love outdoor saunas and getting into very, very cold water. The highlight of my year last year was going on a sauna, on a sauna boat out into a fjord in Norway, in Oslo, and jumping off the sauna boat into a freezing cold fjord
I mean,
in February.
so that weirdly, I can get behind that. Like the sauna to the cold baths, I love that. Just enough. It's the Scottish seas. For those that don't know, they are so cold. So cold. And the thought of just, yes, I'm going to consciously, willingly run out into that sea is just, nope, no thank you. I'm good.
No, well, it's not just the getting in. The getting in, so well, it's not. Everyone says that getting in, it's all right. Yeah, no, I'm a straight in. I'm just a. It's the getting out and getting changed in a windswept beach at 2 degrees with the wind flowing round about you. Anyway, you learn to get changed very quickly, and get a hot cup of tea inside you, and we all congregate round baking and chatting, and there's a whole social element to that.
And what does that
Uh,
do for you mentally? So it's
Oh,
about
the endorphin rush coming out of cold water is extraordinary. I mean, there is no feeling like it. It's, I swim all year round, and in the summer I come out and I think, God, where's the rush? But in the wintertime, when it's really cold, that's when you get that whoosh and your skin's all tingly and it's like pins and needles. It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. And then there's a social element. It's the, huddling together around a cup of tea on the beach and chatting. And when you've shared that amount of cold with somebody, there's a kind of bond attached to that. So yeah, no, so yeah, if you're ever in East Lothian, Saturday morning at 8 o'clock in North Berwick and 10 o'clock at Gullen Beach, and come for a dip.
for a dip, North Berwick. I actually have in the past. It's and it is wonderful, although it's the summer, and I say summer in Scotland, so it was bearable. It was absolutely bearable. Thank you for the invite. we'll,
Maybe
we'll see
not.
if we'll see if I take it up or not. So this podcast is all about growth, and I really like. So there's been a few people that I've spoken to that have said, yeah, I really like it's similar to what you've said about exercises that give me that mental clarity. What do you? And you've mentioned here that HR is all about following legislation, policies, and lots of processes. What do you do, or what habits have you formed, or do you have any habits that allow you to keep growing, and so that you don't feel stagnant as a leader of an HR business?
I love adventure. I love embracing new things and going new places and doing new things. So over the years, I've traveled a little bit. I've climbed a few mountains. I've swum in some seas. I've jumped off sauna boats. So having a sense of adventure that is completely different from all that compliance and process and whatever. Um, if you were to ask my kids when we were young, when they were young and we'd go on a holiday, we would go to an uninhabited island off the west coast of Scotland with no roads and no shops, and we would we would take food with us, and we would just have to make it last for 6 days or whatever. So yeah, a sense of adventure, a sense of the unknown, and a sense of just being back rooted in nature. And you can see I am in my conservatory, and I have a big garden, and my home life is rooted in nature and plants and the birds. And yeah, so it's finding the polar opposite to process compliance. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Again, I can really relate to that when it's because when things are having to be quite, I don't want to say rigid, but there's a certain route and path that you must follow for success here. It is quite nice just to almost rip up the rule book and say, right, free flow, we can do this. Whatever happens, happens. Not get out the system, experience that, get filled up again, and then back to you can then go back to that world of process rigidity and continue on. I am aware of time here, Marjorie, but I'm really enjoying this, so I'm gonna keep going here. I really liked what you were saying about your dad ran his own business there, so you might have a different take on this, and what the drivers there. What did success look like to you when you first started? And did anything that you saw of your father's business inform what success might be?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, um, there were some key principles that my dad ran his business around, which are still very meaningful for me right now, and that is the customer comes first. So he was a shoe retailer. He sold shoes, and he knew every customer and what size of feet they had and what kind of shoes they liked. And so getting to know your customer, knowing your customer, looking after your customer, being close to them, and valuing them as part of your business. So yeah, the relationship with your clients and your customers, that's first and foremost. Secondly, integrity in business, being honest and authentic, and um, running a clean ship as a
Mhm.
business. The stuff that goes on behind the scenes, it doesn't make you money, but it allows you to have a very efficient. So for example, my year end is end of December. Our year-end accounts are already with the accountants, and I'm expecting a draft set of accounts next week.
Mhm.
And that's
Well
that
done.
is that's testament to the fact that we run everything really efficiently and up to date, and everything is kept neat and tidy. So, running a good, clean business, and lastly, community. Um, we are all parts of lots of different sorts of communities, and I think it's important to be involved in community, whether that's us as a team, as a team that works within the business, and we encourage ourselves individually and collectively to get involved. So, for example, in charities and voluntary work, and in other communities, so that and we do a lot of work for organisations who are embedded within communities. So community is important, that we're not a single entity. We have to be part of a much bigger thing, and that is really important. So, um, my dad was involved in the community in lots of different ways, and I was brought up as a brownie and a guide, and I went to Sunday school, and so it was all those sorts of things. So that all comes quite naturally, and that I encourage all of that within the business. So those were the things that I learnt bootstrapped from my dad, and I kind of hopefully carry on through Gravitate, and so that we're not just a business, that we are a, a living being as such.
Mhm, mhm. Like, it sounds like you had very similar childhoods in such a strange way. My dad was also very heavily involved in the community, and he ran the Sunday school and the Sunday club. Did things down with I've completely forgotten what we call it, gala. My goodness, I was like, ran the gala and did all the burgers and things like that. Helped set that up and was in and around everywhere. He was yeah, and it sounds like your dad was exactly the same. And those values there, it's like you take them in and you almost want to honor them in that way of saying, "Hey, look, I'm carrying the torch. Hopefully, I'm doing a good job, and or at least if I'm doing half a good job, then high five, I'll take that." But you might actually be answering my next question here. It sounds like I might know the answer to this, but it might throw a curveball at me. Is for every successful person, I feel like it takes a village to get them there, and is there someone or a group of people, whoever that might be, that has influenced your career to give you the success that you've had today? And what would you like to say about them? Who would that person be?
So first of all, my dad. So importantly, he had made an investment on my behalf in 1981, and I crystallized that in to become the seed capital of the business. So that gave me the financial start that I needed. And indeed all the other things that I've talked about in terms of the values that he gave me. There's another individual who was my first line manager when I was
Okay.
an assistant staff manager in John Lewis, Edinburgh. His name's Charles Lamont. He's not, sadly, no longer with us. But had been an English teacher, and he was a real stickler for grammar and word construction. So being able to write letters, documents, reports, I learnt from Charles, because he would take a letter that I'd wrote and he'd tear it apart. and I'd have to put it all back together again. So being able to express yourself in writing, I had a great teacher, a great master, and that is a skill that has stayed with me. Um, and a wee tribe of people that spur me on would be my children. I'm incredibly proud of my children. I love them very much, and I always want to do the best for them. So hopefully, Mum has delivered.
That's lovely. Very family orientated gratitude there, which is lovely. If you were to go back, this is the final one. I'd like to go back. I've talked about the past a fair bit, but I'd like to go back to your first day on your first job. And what would you tell, let's say, baby Marjorie, with everything that you know, all the wins, all the losses, everything that's going down? What advice would you give Marjorie back on her first day?
So, as a Waitrose graduate trainee, I turned up at Waitrose 158 in Bromley. I can even remember the store number, 158. And I was super keen. And I worked so hard. Maybe if I was to go back now, I maybe don't take it quite so seriously. Maybe have a bit more, maybe have a bit more fun. Maybe maybe take the ups and the downs. I took the downs really hard because I always wanted to super achieve. Achievements have always been something I've strived for. And I had one of the biggest lessons in my life in 158.
Okay, here we go.
I was working, and then I was allocated to the non-food section. So for that, toilet rolls and paper towels and washing up liquid. And there was an assistant section manager on non-food called Toby. And Toby, and you remember, I'm 21. I'm straight out of Glasgow into South London. People could barely understand anything I said. And Toby came from Lewisham and spoke with a South London accent. And I'm not quite sure whether the odds were on, but who was going to win, Toby or the graduate trainee? So he went out of his way to make my life as difficult as possible. And tried to trip me up. In fact, he actually did physically trip me up all over the warehouse floor, if I remember rightly. And I do remember... I can still see him now. And in a one-to-one with my branch manager, my very first one-to-one, having never had a one-to-one in my life before, he said to me, "Marjorie, there will always be a Toby, and it's not about getting away from Toby. It's about learning to live with the Tobys and being able to manage them." And he's absolutely right. There's always a Toby, and it's you can't change Toby, you can't avoid Toby, but you can interact and deal with Toby differently. And I guess if I was going back to me arriving at 158, I maybe would have dealt with Toby differently. But it was a great learning lesson for the rest of my life.
Did you fight Toby, Marjorie?
I'm not quite sure who won in the end, although he might still be in 158 and I'm not.
Oh, yeah. I'm just wondering if Toby's still around. That's all.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Is Toby buried somewhere, Marjorie?
I don't know.
I jest. Well, Marjorie, thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. And thank you to everyone giving your time again to the Think Bambu podcast. I appreciate all of you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.